and thank you so much for tuning into the URC space today and pressing play. This is Nash, your favorite podcaster, and I am so excited that we are going to be unboxing this topic of love and relationships. And I've got my friend Nolan with me here today on the show, and I hope he won't be a stranger. So please help me welcome for the first and hopefully not the last time here on the URC space, Mr. Nolan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nash. I'm super pumped to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and just love the podcast. So humbled to be on here today.
Oh, thank you, man. And you know, it's a two-way street here. Nolan's also a podcaster. You can check out his podcast, amilliondreams.info. Is that correct, Nolan?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, at amilliondreams.info. And I promise you're going to walk away very inspired. But Nolan, I'm so happy that you're here on the show with me today. And, you know, we're talking about millennials and dating and how do we forge and form romantic relationships and all that fun stuff, you know, because there is never enough podcast episodes about it, right?
Right, exactly. It's definitely a hot topic in this day and age right now, for sure.
Yeah. So just to kind of get things started off, you know, can you just share with us, what is your status right now? Are you on the dating scene? Are you contently single, or are you somewhere in between?
Yeah, so I'm kind of a interesting character when it comes to this front, because I'm well into my 20s and I have never dated somebody before. It's never been something that I had really been motivated for. I think in college and in high school, you know, you're driven for the next thing. Oh, I need to get into college. And in college, I'm driven I had an internship and a bunch of other things going on, and you're just thinking about what's next. And then, you know, I get to grad school and you're thinking about what's the road ahead for your career. Where do you want to live? You're factoring in all this different stuff. And honestly, I just didn't feel a need or a wanting to have one. So it was just never a priority for me. And then I moved up to Washington, D.C. And after the first 6 months, I changed jobs when I moved up here. And I had a little bit more free time on my hands. And because it really, since high school to college, I was working to live in an urban area. And, you know, I was able to get there. And then it was just kind of this weird feeling, Ash. I was like, now what? And I'm like, so I'm just thinking through that. I'm processing and trying to figure out, you know, what direction is God trying to lead me, and just taking in so many different things. And I was like, you know what? For the first time in my life, I'm actually very interested in entering the dating scene now. And because I felt like I had the bandwidth, the ability to give some intentionality to it. Okay. And that's good. But here's the thing. I had little to, you know, no experience, because a lot of my, you know, I have a lot of friends that aren't just have girlfriends, but a lot of them are married or they have kids. So, you know, and a lot of times in the past, people would sometimes try to set me up with other people. And honestly, like, I would just get so turned off by that, because it was just so much of a non-interest for me that I was like, people eventually stopped trying to set me up with people, because I just absolutely was not interested at all. Your vision wasn't there. You know, like my parents and other family members would kind of stop asking me if I had a girlfriend or was talking to anybody, because it's like they kind of knew that, like, you're focused. Nolan's not interested, but when he is interested, he will let us know. He'll make it known of what's going on. So, you know, but that being said, Nash, I have experience, even though I haven't been in a relationship before. There has been less than 5 people from high school to college through full-time job. There have been some people that I have truly been interested in, and I got that classic rejection. So I have worked through that. So you could say that, Nolan hasn't entered the dating scene because he is a little cautious of rejection. You could have a point with that. I think some of the rejection, I think, does kind of turn you off a little bit, and you're like, I just don't need this added stress in my life. It's not worth it. And then you kind of just put the emotions on the shelf and you just kind of go on with other things. So I haven't been in a relationship, but I have experienced some of the, for lack of a better word, the trauma and stresses that go along with it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. Wow. There's so much to unbox there. And I want to kind of double click on a few things that you said, if you don't mind. The first thing is I can completely relate to what you were saying in regards to just being laser focused on your career and your goals and kind of establishing yourself, knowing yourself a bit more before you are then wanting to put yourself in a position to where you now want to envelop your life with someone else's. And I also was in a very similar situation. You come to the Thanksgiving table for the 6th year in a row, still with no one, and folks are starting to, ask questions and do the same thing. Like, hey, I know this person, and I think y'all should. I think you should just mind your business and let me live my life. And that's what I would say, very boldly, just because I think for you and for a lot of us as millennial men. Oh my goodness. Women really want to be able to connect with someone who is established. And I don't think that a woman is that much interested in a guy's potential versus what he's actually living. And I think when you as a man can make, you've made an intentional decision that you're putting your best foot forward towards living in an urban area, progressing in your career, chasing after those things that you want, it helps, I think, make the case better for when that time comes. So, I mean, just kudos and applaud to you for just having that diligence and intentionality in that whole space. But the thing that, I can totally relate with the rejection. Oh my goodness. It's like how many times you have to keep putting your heart out there before someone actually, doesn't want to put a dagger in it, because that can be hard. And I think even though it is how do you say, like a tightrope to walk, when it's like, oh, is it gonna, I don't know. Is it gonna, I don't know. One more time is what I just keep telling myself. So I don't know if that's what you tell yourself, but I'm just going to say one more time, Nolan.
Yeah, that's very good advice.
Just one more time. Don't give up. So, you mentioned your friends, and a lot of them are married. Some have kids and all of the beautiful things that come with, devoted, intimate, marriages and relationships. But would you say that would be, like an influence for, what is shaping your view on dating or the lack thereof? Or would there be some other influences you would say in your life has kind of shaped your view on dating and all of those things? Yeah,
it's so interesting, Nash, because a lot of the friends that I went to college with, a lot of them are married and a lot of them have kids. What's funny is that when I left the college town and I went to Washington, D.C., it's kind of the opposite. D.C. is a place where I was reading the other day, 65% of the people are single and have never been married. So suddenly it's like all my friends here, most of them are single, but the friends that I had growing up, friends that I had in college, they have family. So it's interesting, kind of the juxtaposition between kind of the two kind of different friend circles and groups and lifestyles and that sort of thing. So when it comes to like shaping my view on dating, the tough thing is that it's hard to learn when you're not able to get experience. It's like on a job application when they're like, it's an entry level job, but they want you to have 2 to 3 years of experience. And it's like, how am I supposed to get experience if I don't have a job? So with dating, it's like, how am I supposed to learn how to date if I've never have had a serious relationship? So kind of what I've gone through is, part of it is talking to people, it's talking to other friends, but everything's different, it's not formulaic. Yeah. It's not like it's a magic formula. So what I've kind of done is I'll talk to some people about it, some of their experiences and those things. And I'll listen to podcasts. And then I'll read books as well. Exactly. Shout out to Nash, favorite podcaster.
Oh, no. I wasn't expecting you to give me a plug. I'm just saying, like, in general.
Listen, anytime I can plug Nash, I'm going to plug Nash. So even if it's on his own podcast, I'm plugging
my
it.
Gosh. I promise I have not paid him anything to say that. Nolan, you're being very gracious. Thank you. I'm just saying, from podcaster to podcaster, we appreciate this space. And,
it's so good.
It is. And being able to kind of get that content, you know, and, you know,
Yes.
feel like you can levitate on a mountain after you hear some good content, you know?
Yes. And people are just so like raw and authentic. So it's been really interesting, I think, to hear a lot of interviews from those from different podcasts and such. And I think the one book, Nash, I will say, if when people I recommended it to a friend the other day. A lot of, I think, Christian books on dating, I think they try to hit the mark, but they just come across very unrelevant for the millennial online dating world that we're in. And there's one book that nailed it, I think. And he's actually a pastor in Washington, D.C. for Passion City Church, D.C. His name's Ben Stuart. And the book was called Single, Dating, Engaged, Married. And that book just kind of goes through the different phases of like every different phase. And I loved it. And like the chapters on singleness is like, no, enjoy your single years. This is an amazing thing. And then it goes to dating and engaging. It goes through all the different kind of stages in such a relevant way to where culture is right now. So that's been one book where I just underlined the heck out of it.
Yeah.
And it's something that I really go back to a lot.
And I'm going to go ahead and for those of you who are listening, I'm going to leave a link to where you can find that book in the Unboxed Goods show notes for today. So definitely make sure you listen to the end, but I will have a link for that book. And, you know, what you're talking about. And my friend Sierra, she listens to this podcast. I don't know. Have you heard of the Refined Woman, Kat Harris?
I don't think I've heard of that one.
Okay. Well, her market is primarily for millennial Christian, well, not just millennial, but for Christian women in particular. But listen, a brother be peeping in every now and again on the show because I be trying to get some tips, you know, and trying to, you know, understand, you know, what ladies in these streets, you know, what they about, you know. So she sounds like she is hitting kind of what this author that you just mentioned from Passion City Church has done. And she is also releasing a book called Sexless in the City. And she lives in New York, and she's talking about, you know, a lot of the similar things that we've just discussed a little bit when it comes to dating and being in a big city and the single rates being so high and people not being married. So I'm going to her book is coming out in April, and I am going to leave it in the show notes as well. But, you know, you really said something about this whole Christian dating book / advice missing the mark really on what the current millennial generation is facing. And I don't know, you know, I'm just going to go out on a limb here. You know, do you think that the whole purity culture movement did some damage to that?
I think
know,
a
deep
lot
question.
of dating, I think that's a great question. I think a lot of dating content from the Christian realms focuses on sexual purity. Not saying that's not a bad thing to focus on. It's clearly important, but there is so many other aspects to dating right now when it comes to online dating or trying to figure out what is it that you're looking for. How do you know who you're supposed to be looking for? What are some practical steps to put yourself in a position to be able to meet somebody? I think there's a lot of things to Christian dating beyond just the sexual purity part that I think we're just really not hitting on. And I think people really have an appetite to learn more because dating is difficult. And even with the online tools, you could say it's never been easier to meet somebody, but it's also more confusing than it's ever been.
And never been harder.
You have a lot of different choices. You have a lot of different options, and it's tough. And I think there's a big appetite for help, I think.
And authentic help and not the glossed over Sunday school help. You know, we're talking the real authentic help. So that's a really valid point, and that's so good, Nolan. So what would you say for you, what is the biggest prize on the other side of the finish line when it comes to dating?
I think for me, the thing that I'm looking for is like, I want to find basically like your best friend. Like you want to find a friend that you just enjoy doing life with, and that you have similar interests, that you can just be like, hey, let's go do this. You know, really have that companionship, that friendship, that connection on a spiritual level as well. I think that's kind of, to me, that's kind of what I'm looking for. I think down the road, sure, absolutely. I want to make sure that I'm not just dating just for fun, that there is a purpose behind it. And that ultimately, if you met somebody that was right, that would lead to marriage and that type of commitment. But starting out, that's weird for in my spot where I've been single my entire life, for me to be like, oh, I want to go find somebody to marry. Like that's too big. Like for me, like I can't fathom that. So like for me, it's like, I want to find somebody that is like another best friend for me, because I know that whoever I marry, if that happens, I want that person to be like a best friend. So let me focus on that. And I'm not going to focus on the entire road ahead and all the different steps that's involved with that. I'm just going to focus on finding my best friend. My sister, I have 2 younger sisters.
Me too.
The youngest one got married over the summer.
Oh, congratulations.
Or Labor Day weekend. So it's like, I'm not thinking of, there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of steps to a wedding alone, much less the entire relationship span of when you date somebody. So I'm not thinking about like all the different steps. I'm just kind of thinking about the basic. Like, I want to find somebody that I enjoy being around.
Yeah.
Let me go try to find that.
That's good, Nolan. And I was laughing a little bit in my head when you said I don't have the mindset I want to go and try to find someone I can marry. I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of girls who are looking for a guy like that. But it's so great that you kind of just brought it, you bring it back to just, hey, I'm just looking to have a great time with someone who is like-minded with me, and see where we go from there and build from there. And if we can build from that, then, the future is just going to be just unprecedentedly amazing. It's going to be amazing. Okay. I'm getting tongue tied here in the studio tonight, but it's going to be amazing. And congratulations to your sister. That's awesome. And I know exactly what you mean with planning a wedding. In my former life, I was a wedding planner on a cruise ship. So I did about 3 to 4 weddings a week. So I do not miss those days. So I truly understand what you mean when it comes to making sure a wedding is perfect and getting all the details right. But so, you've kind of mentioned dating apps a bit here, and we've been talking about them, and I've used them. I've been on them. And I don't know if this would, have any influence on the next question I'm going to ask, but what would you say, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge facing millennials today who are on the dating scene?
Yeah, I would say it's the dating apps. I think now.
I promise I didn't know that you were going to say that. I was going on a whim. Oh man, people are going to think this show is scripted. No, it's not. This is not fake news. This is live.
About after six to 10 months after I first got to DC, when I was like, oh, I want to try dating, I was like, I really don't want to go down the dating app scene, down that road. I want to try to meet somebody in person, just because I was not experienced with dating apps. And I was like, through church or small groups, I'll be able to meet somebody in person. And then COVID happened, and now it's a lot. It became a lot harder for that to happen. So I'm like, well, if there's ever been a time to try out the dating apps, it would be right now, because it's really the only way to meet somebody right now. And so I have, I downloaded a couple and have tried them out. I will say it's very difficult because I think they're so tricky. And this is where I think it takes a lot of, I think, guidance, because you could really get yourself in trouble with those. And what I mean by that is that you just it's a lot of different facets to it, but you got to know what your standards are and what you're looking for. And you can't settle for less. That's such the thing where it's like, I'm not using the dating app to get a date, because you can get a date with a dating app, because when you're scrolling through so many different profiles, somebody would say yes. The goal isn't to get somebody to say yes.
Right.
It's to come across somebody that you are legit excited to know more about, and that you feel like you connect. The flip side of that is that you are going to come across people that you would like to go on a coffee date with, or you, whatever, you name it. And there will be people where you reach out to and you won't hear back. And it's like, so you will kind of get those bite-sized little rejection in there, So I tried. You never really want to get your hopes up too much because you just don't know what's going to happen. So you really have to, I think, from an emotional standpoint, just be very, very careful with the dating apps. I think they can be very beneficial, for sure. I think it's not like they're all bad and they need to stay away. Some are probably better than others, but I think it's just, they can be a trap depending what mindset you're bringing into it.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I'm going to just share a little bit on why I don't like certain dating apps. And I'm going to name names. So apps like Tinder and Bumble and even Upward, which is Upward is like, the Christian version of those apps. I think they're just so superficial, when you're just in this kind of world of swiping left, swiping right, swiping left, swiping right, like, do I like you? Do I not like you? Do I like, and I'm just basing it off of what I don't really know. One of the apps that I really enjoy the most is Hinge, because I don't know, it just doesn't seem as super. It's still, you're looking pictures and comments, and you're trying to like figure out something to say before you reach out to someone. But I don't like, I prefer that environment or that kind of setup of a dating app versus one where I'm just like swiping, swipe. And I don't know if you've seen this, but Jubilee has done and I'm going to put this in the Unboxed Goods part of the show for you all to take a look at on YouTube. They did like a social experiment where they had a man stand in front of 30 women, and one by one, the women walked up to him, and he had to, move his hand to the right if he wanted to connect with them, and move his hand to the left. And then after that, the women then stood in a circle around him, all the ones who said yes. And those who wanted to engage in getting to know him got to stay in the circle, and those who didn't just walked away. And then it was like down to like, I think 6 different women. And then he went on to like swipe again, to kind of like narrow the weeds. And it was just like, that was just so eye-opening for me to see kind of what we're doing digitally played out on a real life platform with real human beings, and not just pictures and not just quotes and, whatever people want to put on their profiles. It just really just opened my eyes to it. And I think, you really are just, you're bringing something so valuable home there when you say your intentions have to be right, and your heart has got to be girded, especially with the emotional rejection. Everyone's not going to like you. I was listening to Joyce Meyer's podcast last week, I think, and she had mentioned and said, it doesn't matter what you do, whether if it's a professional relationship, a personal relationship, any kind of interaction you have with people, you're guaranteed to be let down. There is an opportunity that people are not going to like you. And I think going into it with that, like, I'm not going to have everyone like me, and I'm not going to like everyone, it kind of just decreases a little bit of that tension. But it's so key about what you're saying, with having your guard up and not lowering your standards. So what would you say is, if you were, let's just say, Nolan, you're the relationship coach, we're sitting in our favorite coffee shop, and we have our listeners sitting with us here today at the table. And, they just want to know, what is the best advice you could give them as someone who is on the dating scene or who wants to be on the dating scene? What would be that kind of culminating thing of essence that you would want them to walk away from our conversation today?
Yeah, it's so funny, Nash. I think the ironic thing of the past year, since I've kind of been more open to entering the dating scene, has been a lot of I have a lot of friends up here that are on a similar boat. Again, they're single and on the dating scene as well. And the funny thing is that there's a lot of times where people will ask me for advice, and I'm like, I'm not the best one to give advice, but for whatever reason, they value what I have to say. And
because you're a great person, Nolan. Even though you gave your testimony about, I haven't dated, you're still a great person, and there's a perspective that you bring to the conversation that is valuable.
Yeah, and to that point, Nash, I think since I have been more intentional over the past year, there have been some tough moments in there where I really wanted to get to know somebody more. And then there is that kind of rejection or that stop sign there. And that's tough. And I think it's
especially
hard.
On us as men.
I haven't done it. I guess I haven't reached out enough to where I'm immune from it. It's like every time it does sting, and maybe over time, maybe it gets a little better. Maybe it never goes away. But some of the things that I've been wrestling with, Nash, that I've tried to kind of tell myself over this period as I kind of move forward is one thing that a friend told me, that shared with me back in the summer, that was a great analogy for me. It was like a lot of stuff when it comes to making that initial reach out for a date or follow-up date, a lot of things has to go right. And there's so much that's outside your control. It's so many other factors are involved. Like you think about Steph, and this is the analogy he used. Think about Steph Curry.
Hey, we love Steph Curry here on the show.
Yeah. One of the greatest shooter of all time with, he's shooting it from half court, and if it's not going in, it's nearly going in, like everything he puts up is close. And you think about like at the end of the game, Golden State's down by 1 or 2 and they need to shoot a 3. You're going to pass into Steph Curry, and because he's the greatest 3-point shooter of all time. But even Steph Curry, he has just over a 50% chance of making it. Like he goes to all these practices, he practices so much, and it's still just a little over 50%. Like there's still like a 40% chance that ball won't go in. Like 40%, the greatest 3-point shooter of all time is still a 40% chance that ball's not going to go in. And that's great odds. It's great odds. Or like in the baseball, like to get in the Baseball Hall of Fame, it's the only sport where you can fail 7 out of 10 times and you'll be a Hall of Famer. Like if you bat 300, you're going to the Hall of Fame for your career. And it's like a lot of things have to go right. It's like you have to shoot your shot and then be able to kind of step away and be like, okay, God, if you want this to go in, you have to get this ball in the hoop. And ultimately, there's so many other factors outside your control. And hopefully, for me, I'm trying to challenge myself to be like, okay, I need to be dependent on God and be prayerful to God to be like, now you do what you see is fit. Because what I've found is that the long road with Jesus is better than the shortcut without him. And sometimes it's going to take longer than you expect.
That's quotable. That's okay. A tweetable. That is a tweetable quote.
Like that has helped me so much during this time, because it's like sometimes life is in a fog and you can't really see too far ahead, but if you have a good guide, you'll trust him. And that's really been a challenge for me. And 2 more things, Nash, I just want to say that really kind of helped me through this time is that you can't operate from a scarcity mindset. It's not like there's only one person, where it's like, oh, that person rejected you. That was going to be your soulmate. It's over. Like whoever you get now is just going to be second best. Like scarcity mindset. If you're in a scarcity mindset, that's going to cause desperation and that's going to cause poor decisions. And it's like, it's a big world out there, Nash. It's a big world.
I know. I've been around it 3 times. You telling me.
Yes. Like we just get caught up in your bubble. I get caught up in my bubble sometimes. And it's like, God wants to draw bigger circles and I keep trying to make them smaller. Wow. And sometimes I need to be able to step outside and be like, you know what, this didn't go the way I wanted it to, but God's got a plan and he's going to put other opportunities into my life as he sees fit. And the last thing that's been stood out to me is that it's when you know you can't lose, that makes you bold. And it's like, you know what, like even if this doesn't work out with whomever, at the end of, like, I believe there's going to be a victory here somewhere. And I can't see it yet, but that's going to make me bold because I know God's got a path forward, and I'm going to walk forward in that path. I'm not going to just because when you're waiting on something, that doesn't mean you have to sit still, you know? And I think in this moment, it's like, no, we can renew our wings like eagles, like it says in Isaiah. Like when we're waiting, it's a time of renewal, and God can use those moments for spiritual growth and really to prepare you for what is eventually to come.
That is so good, and that advice is just bar none. Literally, maybe your friends are onto something with asking you for advice, because that was just so insightful. And I think the one thing that just resonated with me when you were talking about the scarcity mindset, we are kind of, I don't want to say like ingrained with, but we're told there's only the one. And, my whole perspective on looking for the one completely changed when I read a book by Dr. Myles Munroe called Waiting, Dating, and Mating. And in the book, it was like the simplest sentence, and it just completely changed my entire perspective on oh my goodness, there's only one person, and if it's not this person, then it can't be another person. And he was like, in all honesty, there are probably 9, 10, 15, 20. There are numerous different people whom you could deem as a partner. And you picking the one is you solidifying that this is the one that I am choosing, not necessarily that this is the one that was already chosen for me. And then I'm trying to play this game of match and connect the dots to be like, oh, I matched with the one that was chosen for me. It's like, no, if you're enjoying this person and this is the person whom you really want to have that, as you were talking about, that great best friend vibe with, then by all means, choose this one, and that person becomes the one. And that was just so revolutionary for my mindset. And when you talked about scarcity and not making poor decisions, it was just like, preach, Nolan, preach. I need to get an offering plate going on through the studio for you, man. You're preaching good right there. But I'm so glad that we got to vibe here on the show today, and we got to unbox this a little bit more and have this conversation. I'm so thankful that you were able to share with us here on the show. Thank you for being on the URC Space.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here, Nash. And like I said, I just love the work that you're doing. And I think you're a valued voice within the Christian podcasting space, and it's a needed voice. And looking forward to all the future episodes to come.
Oh, thanks, Nolan. And right back at you. Listen, you guys can check out Nolan's podcast at amilliondreams.info, and feel free to check out his podcast. He posts an episode every week, and every month. And it is so inspiring. You're going to be so encouraged. So please make sure you do that. And ladies, if you're listening today, he is single. So I'm just going to put that plug out there for you, Nolan. Shameless plug. Thank you again for tuning in for the URC Space today. Until we unbox our next blank space, I want you to continue living your life one blank space at a time, remembering that you are undaunted, unbreakable, and unfinished, because you have been redeemed, restored, and reclaimed. Keep living life outside the box, y'all, because it's just better that way. Stay free, y'all. We'll see you on the next episode.